I get comments saying, wow, Bitsii, you did it. I'm gonna do it too. I'm gonna move to Japan. But hold up. Yes, I have a Japan channel and I do Japan vlogs, but I'm not saying you should move to Japan. But if you are like me, you might be stubborn, curious, and have the illusion that others can do it, so can you. And somehow, you will be able to summon the power to manage the challenges because you did it. You moved to Japan. But being a person who lives here now, I've got some wacky stories to tell. And if I were in your shoes again, it would have helped to hear sooner some real talk about how challenging this move can actually be. So I'm going to tell you some important lived experiences around daily life, personal relationships, and personal well-being as a foreigner that honestly it would have helped for me a lot to understand before jumping into life in Japan. I'll mention too that everyone's experiences may vary depending on the region and people you're surrounded by, and my location will influence some of my lived experiences, daily practicalities, the interpersonal implications, and the ultimate taboo topic to discuss, at least here in my area, personal mental health, or maybe at times lack thereof. By the way, this is not an exhaustive list, just some things that stuck out to me in my experience here that I don't recall other Japan vlogs talking about so much, so here they are. Bitsii's top 8 reasons why you might not want to move to Japan. First, let's talk about work-life balance. I had a conversation with a former coworker where he told me that he, who is the youngest person at the office, would arrive at 7 a.m. and leave at 9 p.m. Now that's not terribly different from many people in the work environment where I was in America, but the difference is that was in New York. Everybody's kind of competing to survive in the corporate sphere, but this guy works in the middle of nowhere. Usually I would expect that companies out in the boonies would have a bit better work-life balance. But apparently that's not the case here. In fact, someone alerted me to the blasphemous fact that my then boyfriend, now husband, had taken over a day to respond to a work-related email. Yes, a guy who works in the fields and gardens, not at a desk. Even me, who usually does work at a desk, is so busy that it takes me a while to get back to someone. And I absolutely understand when someone takes more than a day to respond to an email. But that is not the case here. The emphasis is on level of service provided to others, and that burden is carried by the individual. It's a reversal of cultural priorities. Where I'm from, it's okay to want to take care of yourself. There's a lot of people who understand that we need self-care, and culturally where I'm from, there is an underlying belief that gotta take care of number one, no one else will. But here the expectation is that the priority will be others. I'm not saying that one or the other culture is better, but I am saying that this is difficult to understand, get used to, and begin to anticipate the expectations of others. And yes, acting generously and providing a high level of service is actually a very lovely thing. But when it exists with the expectation that self-care should not be a priority, that makes things a lot more difficult. Next, the PaperBased Society. One day here in Japan, I decided that I wanted to get the internet. Luckily, my coworker helped me to make the call to request a sign-up form. Yes, ironically, the internet sign-up was not available online. Yes, in 2023, it was only available by paper. So they mailed me the sign-up forms, which consisted of 3 giant pieces of paper with a lot of technical jargon, all in Japanese, with carefully organized boxes for you to fill in the answers. So using the camera function in Google Translate, I'm fumbling my way through filling it out and carefully copying kanji and katakana to fill out my name and address. But wildcard, I have a middle name, and Japanese people don't. And in my last name, I had a capital letter in the middle, which translated into block letters for my passport and therefore in Japanese documents means I have 2 last names. And then in Japanese, you also have to reverse your name order. Family name first, then first name. But then wait, where does the middle name go on an official Japanese form? And guess what? If your name ends up being too long, you are completely out of luck. And if you ask for advice, it's completely throwing a wrench in the whole system. Because if there's not a proper way to do it, it cannot be done at all. So in the case of of signing up for the internet, somehow miraculously we got the name issue resolved. But the other questions on the sign-up form were so convoluted that I definitely had to ask for help from my coworker. But it was too difficult for her, so she ended up calling a team of other coworkers over. So by now we have 4 people on my side, and at least 2 people on the internet company's side trying to figure out how to fill out the form. And somehow between the 6 of us, we did it. But despite this, it was deemed to be completed incorrectly. I ended up filling out the forms 3 different times, at which point myself, a YouTuber, simply gave up on trying to get the internet at home. It's not just the internet that seems to be technologically stalled. You often will need to physically go to a bank in order to pay a bill. If you want automatic withdrawal for utilities, you have to physically go to a bank to set it up. But in my area, they are only open weekdays until 5, which means that you need to take PTO to complete an errand. It's not just PaperBased Society. This is next level. Then there's money and utilities. You can't get loans because you're considered a flight risk. You can't get most Japanese phone plans unless you have an address, residence card, and bank account already set up. You probably can't get a credit card because you haven't lived here long enough. I often can't buy things online because checkout web forms either don't like the fact that my name can't be spelled in kanji or hiragana, or my credit card is completely rejected because international credit cards straight up aren't accepted. And even though I have a Japanese bank account, I wasn't issued a debit card or credit card. I just got a cash card that allows me to take out money at an ATM. It doesn't support online purchases. So if you're like me and on the larger end of things in your home country, you won't be able to shop at stores and you find yourself ordering clothes online. But then you get to the checkout and again, a wrench has been thrown into the system, preventing you from being able to function and do the normal tasks you need to do to exist here like a normal human being. But there are some foreigner-friendly providers that will make your life in Japan much easier. I'd like to thank the sponsor of this video, Mobile. Being connected in Japan is a must, whether you're booking travel accommodations, calling an emergency service, or using data to navigate and translate on the go. Mobile offers SIM and eSIM services with English support so you can access data and voice. Check your phone compatibility first, but eSIMs are the way to go for modern connectivity, which is great because you don't have any tiny pieces to lose. Mobile eSIMs connect over the Docomo network, one of Japan's biggest and most reliable networks covering over 99% of Japan's population. And they have super fast data plans at 1 gig, 5 gig, 10 gigabyte, or 30 gigabyte per month increments. And there are no contracts. You can cancel at any time, with no termination fees. And my favorite part is the English language customer support, which seriously makes all the difference to be able to take care of yourself while in Japan. If you want a Japanese phone number, it's straightforward. You can pick up an access code for voice and data eSIM from a pickup point in Japan, including right when you land at Narita or Haneda. And if you only need data, you can download a tourist eSIM. It'll be delivered to your email inbox within minutes of you purchasing it. And the unique thing about Mobile is that the majority of their profits go to charity. They have projects internationally around food and education for kids. In addition to SIMs and eSIMs, Mobile also offers Mobile Pay. It's a prepaid Japanese payment card that comes in super handy if you realize you can't buy online using your American cards or your Japanese bank card. In fact, you don't need a Japanese bank account at all to use Mobile Pay. It's a card that you can top up using cash at konbinis and ATMs. Then you can use it just like a credit card. And you don't even need a Japanese bank account to be eligible, just a residence card. The service is facilitated through MasterCard and a Japanese bank, and again has fully English support available, and every card contributes to their charity work. So if you are traveling or planning to move to Japan, definitely check out their services, and I've included links for their eSIMs and Mobile Pay in the description box below. Now, on being a foreigner, I want to tell you a wild story. Right before my big move to Japan, I received an email invitation asking if I was available to join a group for tea, and I was so pleased to get the invite. I thought, wow, I was already being included. How great. So naturally, I said yes, and thank you very much. Then I received a follow-up email asking my height so they could prepare clothing. And oh my gosh, I thought, this probably means they are going to be getting a kimono ready. How lucky I was to have this kind of cultural experience so quickly upon arriving. So I put the date on my calendar and let them know my height. Then I was informed that the tea party hosts requested a meeting with me. Unnecessary, but hey, it's a foreign country, so I'll just say yes. So 2 women met with me and gave me a present, lovely chocolates. And then they went on to explain that I would not be enjoying tea at this tea party. Rather, they wanted to host a fine English tea party, and since I speak English, they wanted me to greet the guests in English, pose for pictures with them, and help serve, all while wearing a Renaissance costume and a French colonial beehive wig. So now I'm just thoroughly confused. In America, I had been doing some freelance, which requires a mindset of valuing one's own time. But here, this was a very strange experience because it wasn't like I was being asked. I was just expected to do it. An hour meet and greet, a few hour-long costume fitting session, and an 8-hour costumed day of hosting, and mind you, all as a volunteer, for people that I didn't actually know. And never mind that this is supposed to be an English tea party with a French-themed Halloween costume, and I'm not the least bit English or French. So now I'm just confused, but I already said yes, and they gave me chocolates, and I just landed in a foreign country, and my boss also is involved now for some reason, so I try to be agreeable, and I attend the costume fitting session. And you guys, this was such a horrifying experience. Now, I told them ahead of time, I'm not a tiny woman. Even in America, I'm not small. So they said, we have a free size dress, which is like a one size fits all, and my response is, oh dear, this is not going to work. And I told them it was not going to fit. And they said, no, it's fine, it's a free size, and we have a seamstress. Was it fine? Absolutely not. You guys, look at this dress. And it had a lace-up back, which of course they tried to lace up, but instead of holding me in, it's just a mess. And the wig, oh my goodness, the wig. I have mild rosacea, so my skin leans pink, and this wig is just fully yellow, not blonde, yellow. I looked like a pig in a Halloween costume. After talking it over with some people, I backed out. I tried to respectfully communicate my discomfort with the situation, but in this community, I'm pretty dang sure that I am the person at fault because 1, I did not fulfill the direction of people senior to me. 2, I canceled on something I agreed to. 3, I did not reciprocate in context of obligation due to the gift I received. And 4, I brought up the lack of pay as an issue, and the problem with that being any mention of money is cold and distasteful. While this may be one of my more colorful stories, it is definitely not my most shocking experience. But if you want to hear more stories like this, please comment. And some viewers have mentioned their disappointment that they seem to be missing out on some videos as they come out. So if this is you, go ahead and subscribe and then hit the bell button, which will give you a notification as soon as new videos are uploaded. Okay, on to the next. Let's talk about etiquette as morality. In Japan, etiquette and morality are inseparable. In fact, the introduction to the book Etiquette Guide to Japan is called Etiquette as Morality. So to help you start to begin relating to this mindset, let's do a little exercise. Imagine something you consider to be immoral, like really bad, not just annoying. Now imagine that one of your family members does that offensive act directly to you. How do you react? Do you tell them they are wrong? Do you get angry, lose your temper? Do you call the police? Do you try to make them change? Do you stop inviting them to Thanksgiving or birthday parties? I think you see where I'm going with this. In some circles here, and in the traditional culture, etiquette is morality. Doing things the way that they have been done for centuries, over and over, is morality. So if you feel that getting angry, calling the police, or whatever is justified in your imagined situation, then in turn, in the traditional way here, those actions would also be legitimate reactions to etiquette offenses. And as a foreign person unaware of the highly stylized country-specific etiquette expectations, the unfortunate truth is that your lack of awareness might not just be an annoyance. It might be perceived as offensive and immoral, legitimizing what might seem to be disproportionately extreme reactions. And unless you have an unhealthily thick skin, this is going to be a rough experience, possibly very sad and definitely stressful. Before I moved to Japan, I did a bit of research because I knew that etiquette was important. I even practiced in my apartment how deep to bow, my self-introduction, table manners, but this was not enough to prepare me for what I was going to experience. If there's one mistake I continue to make, it is my continually underestimating the degree to which etiquette is necessary to operate well in this culture. One hard thing about this, especially in an aging population that tilts older, where everyone is higher on the social ladder, is that treating everyone like your boss or like a president is actually a very exhausting and lonely thing to do. Next, on cultural conflict. Japan is an isolated nation that is largely unaware of the way of the outside world. Most people here only speak Japanese, so people naturally stick to Japanese internet, Japanese TV, Japanese books, podcasts, and so on. And the culture here dislikes directness of communication and sad topics. So even news coverage of heavy, noteworthy international events tends to be delivered in a very heavily edited way. Reporters Without Borders ranks countries around the world for factors including independence, transparency, and ethics of news media. Japan ranked number 68, which is not very high at all. Elementist says, there is a growing view that in Japan, the rise of nationalism is restricting press freedom around the world. And of course, every culture has many different kinds of characters and personalities. But it's kind of a well-known fact that many Japanese people are more often than not unfamiliar with other cultures. And those who are interested often only experience other cultures at a very surface level. Even if a Japanese person goes abroad for a single month, it would be common for that person's life perspective to be so impacted that they no longer feel like they can relate to Japanese people who only stay in Japan. But in Japan, if an international person is acting in a way that is influenced by their cultural upbringing, many people will not have the ability to recognize this. Everything is perceived through a Japanese cultural lens. By the way, this is not unique to Japanese people. This happens everywhere, right? We are often a fish in water, unable to understand that we exist in our own cultures. But this video is about being in Japan, so this is what we are talking about. And unfortunately, quite often things that are non-Japanese are concluded to be distasteful and immoral. So instead of being given some flexibility for being from another culture, you may be disliked, judged, and sometimes reprimanded. And on the other end of the spectrum, there are the Japanese people who enjoy foreigners in a much more objectified way, as a novelty and curiosity, but not necessarily for a person's character or humanity. To be honest, I've only met one person here who I felt truly liked me the way I was, without wanting me to change. Again, I'll emphasize that these stories are just told from one person's experiences and the limitations of my perspectives, understandings, and what I've read, and what I learned through discussions here with both Japanese and international people. You may often hear that Japan is changing, and I've heard this too. But I think the amount that I heard this gave me an unrealistic expectation as to the level of Western cultural compatibility that I would discover here. And natural disasters. Just recently, a massive level 7 earthquake hit Noto Peninsula of Ishikawa Prefecture, Japan, which was accompanied by tsunami evacuation. Many homes and buildings collapsed with people inside them. Lives were lost. Our sympathies go out to everyone affected by the event. Even for those whose families weren't taken, a level 7 earthquake must be a massively frightening and traumatic experience. Not something I would ever wish for a neighbor. But in Japan, it's not just these high-intensity natural disasters people here need to be concerned about. There are a kind of everyday disaster that occur at a different frequency compared to what I'm used to. And this country is mostly mountains, and there's plenty of rain and mountain spring water, so there's an increased risk of landslide compared to other parts of the world. Not to mention volcano eruptions, regular typhoons, floods, cyclones, earthquakes, and tsunamis. Every household is recommended to have emergency supplies. This isn't just in anticipation of the big one, referring to the massive earthquakes anticipated to devastate Tokyo and other parts of Japan, but also for the small and medium ones that happen on a semi-regular basis. Last summer, a typhoon came through the area where I was living, which ripped off part of the roof of the local school gym and also ripped off the roof of my bathroom. It was fixed easily and quickly, but this threat to mental and physical well-being is just a part of normal life here, where kids have evacuation drills regularly, and every school desk is accompanied by an emergency helmet. Next, the major philosophical divide. Last but not least is what I'm going to call the Great Divide. This Great Divide is informed by many things: lack of shared experiences to draw from, language barriers, and the Japanese way of thinking. I've heard from a lot of international people who have grand ideas about how they can be useful or contribute to society here. I myself was one of those people. People who want to help with disaster relief, in translation and global relations, fixing up and maintaining abandoned Akiya houses, or even just being here, working, paying taxes, and contributing locally in light of the devastating depopulation Japan is currently facing. And those are great intentions, and you might be capable of achieving great things. But to simplify things a bit in life, there are intentions, methods, and results. I come from a place where numbers rule. It's all just a means to an end. That's a results-centric perspective. And if you fail, you can be forgiven if your intentions were good. Here, numbers are insensitive, and results don't take priority. The way things are done is the most sacred thing. The Japanese way is the moral way and the most acceptable way. So there will be occasions that don't make sense to us Westerners because they don't work. They don't achieve the result. But here, results aren't the priority. The way is the priority. And those people like you and me who want to contribute contribute to this society won't be able because our non-Japanese way is unacceptable and the results don't matter as much. I know a lot of people really struggled with mental health during the pandemic. Granted, I moved to rural Japan during the pandemic, but when I moved here, things were fairly unrestricted and I went to work and socialized without interruptions. Regardless, the experience of being here and managing the great cultural divide feels similar to the quarantine that I was living through in New York. All of my friends and family were unavailable to chat due to time difference, and you are simultaneously managing external stressors. Derukui wa utareru means the nail that sticks out gets hammered down. As a foreign person, you are sure to stick out and likely to become the target of pressure. And when conflict arises, it's likely to be puzzling, where tactics unacceptable in one's home country are here considered not just to be acceptable, but the mature way to resolve situations. Tactics such as employing a middle person for communication and avoiding direct conversation. Simultaneously, tatemae will leave you confused and feeling betrayed, and efforts to address problems through discussion may be met with arguments that are employed as a means to enforce hierarchy over equality and conformity over meaningful resolution. That is then all experienced with the additional layer of verbal communication challenge, a fair share of shame and guilt, and last but not least, top it off with a big yellow French colonial beehive wig. That, my friends, is not a great recipe for good mental health. Now, I want to emphasize that I'm very thankful to live in Japan. The challenges and the benefits go hand in hand. The stunning scenery coexists with natural disaster risks. Social rigidity coexists with ancient traditions and culture. And the rigidity is what allowed them to survive. Nothing makes sense, but at the same time, it all lines up and contributes to this fascinating place that has mastered and perfected trades, systems, and teamwork. And let me remind you that I live in Japan and I have no immediate plans to leave. But it hasn't been all sunshine and ramen. So I wanted to share some of the experiences that it would have been helpful for me to hear, that maybe would have made it easier when I got here. And for anyone on the fence, I hope you can get a more balanced image of both sides that can help you understand the challenges realistically so you can manage them safely and productively. If you found this video valuable, please consider supporting over on Patreon. And I would love for this to be a community discussion. Do you have any questions or experiences that you'd like to add? Drop a comment and I encourage you to talk to each other. You all teach me a lot, so thank you. And if you like this video, don't judge a book by its cover, but I think you would like this one too. Take care, y'all. Bye.